Everybody out there, time for another movie retrospective. The one that won the Patreon poll this week was the 1992 adaptation, Bram Stoker's Dracula, the Francis Ford Coppola one.
Yeah, classic flick.
This is actually a really good flick. Like, I think I saw this in the theater when it first came out, and I liked it at the time, but I think my appreciation for it has really kind of grown over the years. In large part because, I mean, really, the best thing about this, other than like Gary Oldman's performance, obviously, I think the best thing about this is the special effects. And I like that Francis Ford Coppola was like adamant that they were going to go like old school for everything. And so you didn't get that thing where, you know, sometimes now you see horror movies and stuff like that were made in the early 90s that had like kind of dodgy CGI in there and it looks like really, really shitty.
Yeah.
So the fact that they used like all old school methods like really helped the movie like become like timeless in a way.
Kind of like an old Universal flick, but it's in color with a lot bigger budget.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because so what happened with this was that I think the dude that wrote the screenplay, I think he'd been like hawking this script around since like the 70s, like 1977, which like I said, they made a Jack Palance one. I think that was in 1977, right? Like made for TV. Yeah. The one with Frank Langella came out in 1979, which we'll probably review one of these days because one of you guys sent it to me and I really, really like that adaptation as well. But the guy that wrote the screenplay was kind of like, well, I feel like there have been like a zillion adaptations of Dracula, obviously, but none of them are really, really that close to the book. So he wanted something that was a lot more book, you know, focused. And, you know, because the earlier ones, really like the Universal one with Bela Lugosi and stuff like that, those are mostly based on the stage play. So a lot of shit was like taken out. A lot of characters were taken out or combined. And over the years, like kind of they've had all these different adaptations. Actually, Cinemassacre did, or James, that one guy on Cinemassacre, he did a really, really entertaining video where he had like a contest between like all these Dracula adaptations, like which one was the most faithful to the book.
Yeah, I don't know how he kept them all straight.
I don't know either, but it was like, cause, you know, that's what nerds do. That's what we nerds do. We just like, we love doing that kind of shit. And
every difference in the plots.
Every single different one. Yeah. It was amazing. It's like I've watched it a couple of times because I just thought it was entertaining. And spoiler alert, this one, and there was a BBC version, I can't remember what year that it came out, but those two were actually the most faithful adaptations. Weird thing about this one though, is that even though in a lot of ways it is really faithful to the book, it also seemed like, this is a weird thing to say, but it's like the most faithful to the book and also maybe the least faithful to the book. Because it's like it has all the shit from the book, but then it adds a bunch of shit that isn't in there. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like particularly all the stuff about the romance angle, obviously, and, you know, Winona Ryder's, character, Mina, being the reincarnation of Vlad the Impaler's wife, Elisabetta. And that being the reason that he goes to England, I think, although they're not real clear on that in this version of the story. And kind of having him, I guess when Oliver Harper did a movie retrospective on this, and he said that the character of Dracula in this one is played more like a fallen angel, which maybe was the first, I don't know if it was the first Dracula adaptation to do that, but it was for sure like a really influential one. Because I feel like a lot of Dracula adaptations that happened like subsequently went with that angle as well. Because in the book, I mean, if you haven't read the book, Dracula in the book is not a real complex character. He's a monster. He's just like an evil man. He doesn't have any redeeming qualities. There's no romance. There's no anything like that.
Yeah, the Klaus Kinski version of Nosferatu is closer to what the original vampire was in the book.
Yeah, and in a way, that's really weird to say because I think that people who haven't read the original book and have only seen like some of the adaptations, you could be forgiven for thinking of Dracula as kind of like, you know, a fallen angel or like a suave motherfucker who was like, or it being like romantic, which a lot of ones in the 70s did that as well. The Jack Palance one, like I mentioned, the Frank Langella one. So this version, the Coppola version, isn't the first Dracula to make the vampire a romantic figure or a tragic figure because... And it's not even the first one to add that whole reincarnation of the dead wife thing, because I'm pretty sure the Jack Palance one did that too. And that was in the 70s. That might have been 79. I think Dan Curtis did that one. But that was because he was he was kind of influenced by his own soap opera Dark Shadows, so he wanted it to have more of like a gothic romance type of feel.
This is still probably the best Dracula movie, though, I think.
I would probably agree with you on that.
The only thing wrong with it is the damn accents.
Yeah.
Fuck, man. Why don't they just let them be Americans?
We got to talk about Keanu.
Yeah, Keanu Reeves.
I love you, Keanu.
Yeah, he's good. He's good. You know, I mean, especially fucking doing the action. You know, what was it?
John Wick.
Yeah, the John Wick. He's awesome. And Bill and Ted's and everything. But he just can't do a British accent. I don't know why they did that. They should have just let him be an American.
Well, the thing about it is that I don't know if... I think the reason that they put him in the movie was because he was like a real up-and-coming star. Like, both him and Winona Ryder, because they wanted somebody that was...
appeal.
Right, that was going to, like, draw in, like, younger viewers or, Americans and stuff like that might have been put off by British, like, having British actors in the leads, I guess. Even though they're not... There's not really a lead in this other than Dracula. I mean, it's kind of an ensemble movie. The thing about, and like I said, I love Keanu Reeves, and this movie came out so long ago, and everybody and their mama has, like, shit on Keanu Reeves for his performance in this movie. So I don't want to pile on, because I do love him.
It's not his performance, it's the accent. That's all.
Yeah, he's a little wooden, but I think he might be wooden because he's trying hard. Yeah, so he just... The thing about it is that some actors have a lot of range. They can play anything. Yeah. But most actors, I mean, that's pretty rare. Most actors have a wheelhouse. You put them in one type of movie and they're great. You try to put them in another type of movie, not so much. It's not so much that there's a bad actor. It's just that some people just have particular things that they're good at.
I think he was also supposed to be kind of like a retro uptight, fucking Victorian type guy also. But mixed with that British accent and just him, and it just didn't work, if you ask me.
Yeah, he's kind of like now, when people talk about like shitty, Americans doing shitty British accents, he's like the top of the list, I think.
I mean, there's nothing in this story that dictates he must be British.
He could have just been an American.
You had Americans living in England?
Sure.
Traveling around. I just would have let him have his own fucking voice. His own normal accent.
Although I don't know if that would have worked either, because Keanu's voice is very California surfer dude.
Yeah.
And it's very, very hard for him to disguise that fact. And like I said, that's just his voice. There's nothing you can do about it. That's what he sounds like.
And I wouldn't have cast him.
You know what? I was thinking about it. He doesn't like ruin the movie or nothing like this. It's still a brilliant movie. It's gorgeous to look at. Gary Oldman is fucking amazing as Dracula. He's just like he's a fantastic actor all around. He's one of the ones I was thinking of when you say like people that have range. He can play just about anything. But it doesn't ruin the movie, but it does kind of stick out. I mean, when you have a movie with fucking Gary Oldman and Anthony Hopkins, and then you have like Richard E. Grant and all these other like great British actors, the two of them, and Winona too, to a smaller extent. Her accent's better, but still not that good. Yeah. So I feel like having these two in there, I just think it was a case of like them being a little bit miscast is all. For Jonathan Harker, I can't remember how old. I would have liked to have seen Jude Law in that role. I think Jude Law would have been actually really good, and he is British. So I think that they should have gone with British actors if they were going to go that route.
One of the best things about this movie is that both of them girls are running around in damn near fucking see-through fucking nightgowns, man. That was the best thing about the movie.
I love that Francis Ford Coppola leaned into, he's like, I not only want to make this using only methods that were in use at the turn of the 20th century, like for movie making, miniatures, back, like rear projection, all that kind of stuff. He's like, so we're not only going to do that, but he also made it this kind of like, Victorian repression opera type of thing. Like he just dialed the fucking shit up to a blood, tits, like fucking, it's just like super overwrite, but it really, really works because it's like an opera. You know what I mean? Like, it's really, really... I don't want to say it's overwrought because that sounds like I'm, like, shitting on it, and I'm not. I mean that in, like, a really, really good, like, positive way.
20s and the 30s, though, had movies that were like this.
Yeah.
American ones, you couldn't show naked breastises. But shit that was damn near see-through, I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did that, too. They got around it.
And another thing, too, that he wanted to do... here's something that I didn't know, but I just, like, learned this today because I was kind of watching a little documentary about it. initially, when Coppola conceived this movie, and it's ironic because Winona Ryder was the one that actually brought him the script for this, because I guess she felt bad for having to pull out a Godfather 3 at the last minute. They ended up putting Sofia Coppola in there, and that was a decision that got a lot of critics, like, you know, it got the movie shit on a lot because her performance was kind of crappy. So Winona was like, hey, no hard feelings, check out this. I know how much you love Dracula, and here's like this really original take on it that's a lot closer to the book, and I know you've been wanting to do something like that. So she kind of like showed it to him. Initially, his conception was that he wanted most of the sets not to be blank. I mean, not that fucking, you know, crazy, but he wanted the sets to be very, just not a lot of detail in them. So the costumes would be the major thing. So even from the beginning of the production, when they were thinking about it, he's like, I want the costumes to be like a fucking knockout. No black capes, no regular shit that you would see like in a regular Dracula adaptation. So the woman that designed the costumes, she's a Japanese woman. I can't remember what her name is, but she definitely wanted to bring in like a lot of Eastern influence, which she did, particularly in Dracula's. He has like those long kind of Asian looking capes and stuff. And even though a lot of the costume design, you could say it was, some parts of it were like anachronistic because, you know, oh, they didn't wear that in whatever year that was, you know, like 1897 or whatever. But it's like she really, really made it work. I mean, the shit looks fucking gorgeous. Like all of the dresses that Lucy and Mina wear, the fucking burial shroud that Lucy had with like that big frill like around her neck. And it's like, that's fabulous. I love that shit.
She comes in with that baby. That was a trip.
Yeah, and I love that they actually showed that too, because I feel like, because that's in the book. I mean, Lucy coming back and like eating a baby, and they see her like eating the baby. It was like eating little kids and shit like that. So they didn't really shy away from that in the movie, which I thought was cool. But like I said, the whole aspect of the movie where, you know, this might have been, like I said, one of the first ones, although I think maybe the Jack Palance one did it as well, that definitively tied Dracula to actually being Vlad the Impaler. Even though I was watching something earlier, because I feel like nowadays, and maybe because of this movie, I feel like everybody's like, oh, you know, Dracula is based on Vlad the Impaler. Not the case. Bram Stoker, he did actually know the name. He got the name Dracula, like, from that family line. But there's no evidence that he actually knew much of anything about Vlad the Impaler, like the actual dude. So it seemed like that kind of happened later on, that, you know what I mean? That like the character that he wrote about, they're like, oh, that kind of sounds like Vlad the Impaler. Because I guess there was like a bootleg Turkish version of the novel that was, you know, like released over there in Turkish, obviously. And there they like said, oh, that sounds like Vlad the Impaler, or somebody like that. So I think that's kind of how that happened. But I think nowadays, I think everybody just like takes it for granted that Dracula, the character, was based on Vlad the Impaler, which he wasn't necessarily. You know what I'm saying? He just got the name from that because he thought the name was cool.
Yeah.
Originally, he was going to call, this is like so funny. Originally, he was going to call the vampire Count Wampir.
Yeah.
I was like,
vampire.
Little on the nose there, Bram.
I think the Nosferatu version, I think it was Count Orlok, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. They had to change it to Orlok because of most people know
copyrights and stuff.
Copyright issues. They couldn't get the copyright to the novel because it was still on copyright now. It's, you know. But yeah, so the stuff about him being Vlad the Impaler. But that said, even though that none of that is in the book, I like that addition. I like that they made this like almost a gothic romance, and they also did kind of a thing where, particularly in Mina's character, and like I said, I love Winona Ryder too, but I kind of wish they had also cast a British actress for her role too. But you know, even though she does a lot better than Keanu, but I still wish that it was a British actress. But so I like that they almost were making a statement about her kind of like being like Victorian repressed, or because they actually have her and Lucy kind of have some conversations about this, where Lucy is kind of like slutty and Mina is kind of like, man, I wish I could be slutty, but you know, everyone will get like all upset at me because Victorian repression, blah, blah, blah. But then like when Dracula comes, she's like, oh yeah, I'm not, make me a vamp. It's like, you know what I mean? She just like goes whole hog with the shit. So I like that they kind of did, because the novel, back in the old days, you couldn't really come out and be like, have all this like fucking smut in there. But some of the shit in the original book, Dracula, is pretty smutty for the time. And people probably would have been like, retiring to their fainting couches, like reading some of that shit. You know what I mean? But I like they ramped it up in this version where it's basically just like she was ready to have him like bite her, and she's like, sure, I'll become a vampire and murder innocent people, why not? So he's like, we'll just be together. Listen, that didn't happen in the book. In the book, I mean, he did like, drink her blood and like trade blood and everything, but he forced her to do it. Whereas in the movie, she was just kind of like, okay, you know what I mean? So but you could argue too that he was kind of hypnotizing her, but I don't know, because she seemed kind of into it. She was pretty into it.
I think it was kind of a nod to the Bela Lugosi version.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what they were doing. But, out of the two, man, this one's probably better than the Bela Lugosi version, but Bela Lugosi for me was the fucking definitive fucking Count Dracula. That's pretty much him. Yeah. Even though not a whole lot happens in that movie by today's standards.
And it's very stagey.
Yeah, a lot of talking. That's it.
Yeah. So you could, and like I said, it's very strange to think that the Coppola version is a lot more faithful to the book. I was very happy. One of the things that I was happiest to see when I first saw this movie in the theater back in 1992 was that somebody finally included Quincy Morris. For Christ's sake. That poor motherfucker. He's in the book, and he does shit in the book. Like, he's like, and the way they show him in the Coppola movie is pretty much the way he's described in the book as well, like pretty similar. And I love that. I think this might be the only adaptation that has Quincy Morris in it. I think there were a couple other ones. I think there was a British one and maybe one other one, like a fucking Turkish one or a Mexican one or something like that had a Quincy-like character, but things that a lot of like adaptations did was like they would combine two characters. We're like, well, we don't need Lucy to have 3 boyfriends, like to form this vampire fighting squad. It's like she doesn't need 3 of them, so we're gonna like combine them. So I think
cheaper for production too. You didn't have to hire as many people.
That's true, because I feel like. I mean, I can see it from a movie making standpoint, because you're like, man, this is a lot of people and it's a lot of dudes. And unless, like, you want them as like the Dracula busters or whatever, but it's like, do we really need this guy? Or, he only does a couple things, so we can just like make this other dude do his shit and then just like write him out of the stuff. That's what they're doing, yeah. So I feel like that's kind of always what happened with Quincy. So I was very, very happy to see that he's not a huge part of the shit, but he does like do stuff. And I like that they brought back that aspect of like her having like 3 suitors and, oh my goodness, I have all these boys that love me and I can't decide like which one I want to marry and all this other kind of stuff. So I thought that was like cool that they brought that, because it kind of like, bolstered the whole theme of her being kind of like, not slutty. I mean, I'm just open with her sexuality, and Mina being kind of jealous of that. You know what I'm saying? So I think that kind of like bolstered that theme that they were going for.
For me, one another thing that stood out about this movie though was Tom Waits.
I was just gonna say,
he did a really good job as Renfield.
I love Tom Waits anyway. Like, I love his music and stuff, so I thought it was like really cool that they put him in there as Renfield.
Yeah, I don't remember him in any other movies though.
He was in a couple other ones, but he was in The Dead Don't Die. Remember? Okay. That Jim Jarmusch zombie movie that we saw.
That's right. He used to have a reputation of being kind of hard to work with.
He seems like he'd be kind of a weirdo.
He was kind of crazy. Yeah.
He seems like he'd be kind of crazy. Like, not in a shitty way, but he seems like he's eccentric. Let's put it that way. Yeah. He just seems a little eccentric.
Probably means drunk all the time. I don't know what that means. I don't know what they're getting at, but I just heard that
I don't know what they're getting at.
He's a little kind of crazy. I've seen some interviews with him when he was a young guy pretending to be an old man, and he kept breaking character and shit.
He's like, I'm still working out my old man shtick. You know,
he starts fucking grinning that he's pretending to be an old guy. Yeah.
I think casting him as Renfield was inspired. Yeah. And some people were like, but like I said, some people were like, oh, it's overwrought, it's over the top or anything like that. But that's what this whole fucking movie was. It's like I said, it's like an opera. Like the way that it looks is like an opera. It's like Anthony Hopkins, like acting like a crazy person, and shit like that. But he plays Van Helsing, and he's kind of like, you can tell that in his backstory, he might have fought some vampires before, like in the past, and maybe like addled him a little bit. Yeah. So he seems exactly like I imagined Van Helsing would be.
Yeah, which is kind of strange because Anthony Hopkins plays the same character constantly.
He kind of does, yeah. He's just always
himself.
He's always Anthony Hopkins.
Hey, can you come in and be Anthony Hopkins for us? Yeah, sure.
Sure, I can do that.
Sure, I can be Anthony.
Give
Hopkins
me my
for
$40 million. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
But he's so brilliant that it's like, you can't,
that's his job.
You can't be mad.
That's his job.
Well, that's what he gets hired to do. They're like, they hire Anthony Hopkins to be Anthony Hopkins.
Exactly.
He's not one of those actors that like vanishes into a role.
No, he's not a Dustin Hoffman.
Yeah, you need somebody that's like, he was like bigger than life. And I think that was like really good that they cast him as Van Helsing because he came across as bigger than life.
His job is to come in and class the fucking place up. That's what he does.
That too.
He classes the place up.
And like I said, I think that was what made Keanu and Winona suffer a little bit by comparison, just because like not only, like I said, you have Gary Oldman giving like easily one of the best performances of his career, and you had to think too that Gary Oldman had to play Dracula in all his different iterations, like looking like an old man, looking like a young man, looking like a bat, looking like this, like that. Yes. So it just the fact that he had to play it all like that, and he came across with such, pathos, and he came across as like evil but still kind of sympathetic. But you understood like why he had to be destroyed because, he was kind of like a tragic figure. So I just thought that was like a really, really good performance. And I mean, shit, man, some of his lines from this have become like iconic. Also want to give a shout out to Richard E. Grant, who really needs to be in more movies because I love that dude. But I think that he got this job because Francis Ford Coppola really liked With Nail and I, which if you haven't seen that is a great fucking British movie. But yeah, he was in this playing Dr. Seward. Also like over the top, but in the best possible way. But yeah, it's like, and Sadie Frost too, playing Lucy. I really liked her as well. I was going to mention when we were talking about Keanu and his not being so good at these types of roles. I will note, too, that he was also cast in Dangerous Liaisons, the one that had John Malkovich and Glenn Close in it, which is it was one of my favorite movies ever. I love that fucking movie.
It's about how to fuck other people over.
It is. It's great. It's a fucking great movie. And Keanu, he doesn't ruin that one either, because, I mean, his part is, like, pretty small. So he's not like, stinking up the joint too much like us. No, I'm sorry, Keanu. I really do love you. But he had the same issue in that. Even though they didn't really make him, I don't remember them making him talk in a British accent or a French accent, because it's supposed to take place in France, but everybody was just talking with their mostly normal voices. But he was still trying to be like, I'm in a historical period piece, and it wasn't working out. So I don't know. I think maybe those are the only two movies that I can think of, and there might have been more, it's like somebody correct me, but those are the only two movies that I can think of that were like historical dramas, like period pieces that they put him in, and then after that they're like, yeah, let's not do that anymore. He's too modern. Like, we've talked about that before. Some actors, some people's faces, some people's voices, it just doesn't translate. Like, you don't believe that person was alive back then. You know what I'm saying? And when you're doing a period piece, you really need people that look like they could have lived back then, because otherwise, you can't suspend your disbelief. And he's just one of those people that...
He's just too California.
Yeah, he's just too modern. He's just too much of a modern person. You can't... His whole aura is a modern guy from California.
Walks. I mean, just the way that dude
That's
walks.
What I mean. It's just like a whole thing. Yeah, it's how he talks. It's his facial expressions. It's everything. Yeah. And you just never... And I never bought it for a second in Dangerous Liaisons
I'll tell you one thing about Reeves, though. That motherfucker can shoot.
Well,
I've watched him at the range fucking work. He's good with pistols, rifles, and everything. A lot of that fucking shit you see him doing in
the John Wick movies.
In them John Wick flicks, he can do. Yeah, he can do.
Like I said,
headshots, multiple headshots on fucking man targets out to about 20 meters. He's fucking fast reloads, everything. He's got proper training. I mean, he does that shit. He rides motorcycles. In some ways, kind of like Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise actually can do a lot of the shit that they show him doing. He can even fly aircraft, you know.
Which, like I said, you got to respect that
shit, yeah.
because that's somebody that's taking acting to like a whole new level. They're like, I'm really going to learn to do this.
Reeves is those are lifestyle guys. They just don't want to make movies and they want to do cool shit too, you know. Which I respect that. They're not just sitting around, you know, fucking getting drunk and screwing hookers and shit like old Tiger Blood. What's his name?
Charlie Sheen.
Charlie Sheen. You sit around and just fuck hookers all day.
Yeah, and then just go pretend to be something else.
Spread diseases.
And spread diseases,
yeah.
Like you do. And like I said, no ding on Keanu. It's just that he's not like a period piece dude.
No.
A lot of actors aren't.
No.
And like I said, it's nothing against them. It's just something about how they look or walk or talk or how their face looks or something like that that you just don't believe it. And but as I said, you know, that said, he doesn't ruin this movie, even though because in a way, like you said, it does kind of work in the sense that he's supposed to be like this kind of uptight stick in the mud sort of character.
Yeah,
so the woodenness kind of works. It's the accent that's really shitty.
They made it was a dumb decision. Coppola should have known better. They should all they had to do is just add a line that she was her fiance or husband, fiance, right?
Yeah, they married in the course of the movie.
That's right.
Yeah.
That she was his fiance from America. That's all they had to do.
Yeah. And
just let him be American, and it made a lot more sense.
Because Quincy was American.
Yeah.
I mean, he was American in the book, too.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. It's like either get a British actor or explain that he's from the United States. That's all, like you said, that's all it would have taken.
Or something.
Yeah, that's all it would have taken is just like one line.
Yep.
Because, you know, yes, they wanted to make the most faithful adaptation of the book, which they did, because like I said, a lot of the stuff is actually faithful to the book. And they even did like the whole epistolary style, like, you know, doing with the ship logs and the diaries and everything like that and switching perspectives, which the book does too. So they did that, but it's like, it really seemed like that would have been a very simple, you know, and they added the whole romantic subplot and the whole Vlad the Impaler thing, and that wasn't in the book, so it's like...
fucking added that he was from Boston and had him do a transatlantic fucking accent, because he could do a transatlantic, and there you go.
Yeah. Like I said, as long as he didn't... The one thing that I see a lot of is that people that are talking about this movie, because most people that have reviewed this movie or seen this movie, like, love this movie, except for him. Like, but they say, like, they don't... It doesn't ruin it, but it just sticks out. Yeah. Just because the rest of the movie is so awesome, like the visuals and all the acting and everything like that, he just kind of like sticks out. But I don't know. I feel like a lot of people are like, well, every time he's on screen, I expect him to go, dude.
Yeah. Dude.
Which you do, kind of.
They should have made
Dracula.
Should have allowed it. He said, dude. They had that in the 1800s. See, you see the dude from Texas, and he goes, "You dude, you're a dude,
dude,
you're a dude, aren't you?"
Oh my God, that would have been
all he had to do.
Fucking funny. He could have called Quincy too, because they did have that word.
They had dudes. Quincy was a dude.
He was a dude.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I want to see that.
That's all they had to do.
That would have been funny as shit.
Those fucking directors need me around. All right, they need me around to fucking tell them what to do.
Because that joke.
Shit. That joke would have fucking sent that movie to another level.
Because it's just right there between like brilliant and stupid. You know what I'm saying? It's right there on that knife edge.
Aren't you a dude?
Dude.
And you go, why, yes, I am a dude.
That might have been like really funny, actually. Now I kind of want to see that. But yeah, all right. Yeah, so anyway, I find it very hard to believe that anyone has not seen Bram Stoker's Dracula from 1992. Even if you haven't seen it, I'm sure you've seen like the zillions and millions of different parodies of it. Like they parodied it on The Simpsons, they parodied it on fucking In Living Color, whatever the fucking show that was.
It's a type of a masterpiece, actually.
It is, yeah. And like I said, I think that one of the things, other than, you know, Gary Oldman being like fucking epic in the shit.
Tom Waits being
epic in the shit. Pretty much everybody being epic in it, except for those two. But you know, I think like the look of it has gone a long way too toward like making it a classic, because you know, not only are the costumes fucking amazing, just like the whole thing is just like amazing looking. Every single thing that they wear is like just fucking amazing. But also the way that Coppola was like stuck to his guns, and because initially when they were first like, before they started like working on the movie, his first like special effects crew were like, dude, we need to like do all this stuff with computers, and he said absolutely not, and he would not let them do it, and then like the crew bitched, and he fired all of them, and so he got like his son to come in and like oversee the shit. He's like, I don't want any computer effects at all. I want everything done the way it would have been done in the very, very earliest days of cinema, and that's all there is to it. And the fact that he stuck to his guns, and they found these like really, because if you have the DVD or the Blu-ray, they usually put like a and you can probably find it on YouTube too for all I know, but they have like a documentary about how they did all the effects. Watch that shit, because it's amazing like how they did some of the effects, and that's all shit that they would have done like back in the early days of special effects, when you didn't have computers. You couldn't like fall back on that. It was, so I think the fact that he did them old school, and it had a particular style that like draws you into the movie, and it has like a whole particular look and like a fantasy like opera kind of look to it. I think that's going to make it like timeless. It doesn't seem like a movie from the 90s, or it doesn't seem like an old movie, you know what I'm saying, when you watch it, because it just has that kind of like timeless quality to it.
Yep.
So yeah, if you haven't seen it, which like I said, I'd be very surprised if you hadn't, then you should probably see it. I think it's on Netflix at the moment, or maybe Shudder. I don't even know. But yeah, so check it out, and tell me in the comments who you would have rather seen play Jonathan Harker than Keanu Reeves. Jude Law was my thing, but I'd have to like go back to see what other like younger British actors were kind of around at that time, because I can't really remember. But Jude Law was the first one that I thought of. But yeah, so let me know what you think in the comments, and that'll do it for our retrospective on Bram Stoker's Dracula, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye.